All right, well, really excited to have Bob Krause with us here on the Rising Champions podcast. Of course, Dr. Jason Novetsky of the Champion Mindset Group with us as well. And, the focus here is rising athletes and athletes that are on the come up. And this is a very unique situation here because Bob, you'll see him on Channel 4. You'll see him teaching, certainly plenty of golfers in and around the area how to improve their game, how to get better. And Bob himself, on a journey here in many different ways, trying to get to the Champions Tour. And Bob, we've had a chance to chat outside of the podcast a little bit, and I find your story fascinating. So I guess, can we start by going back a little bit before we get into kind of what is going on now and your early career, how you got into golf, why you kind of veered away from it a little bit before we get into why you're going back?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So, real quickly, I played right around 9 years professional golf, from Hooters Tour to Web.com to Ben Hogan Tour. Went to tour school a couple of times. Came up with Zach Johnson, Chad Campbell, those kind of guys that are still kind of out there. Obviously Zach's won the Masters and that kind of thing. We all kind of came up together, and I was about 22 when I started, finished when I was about 31. And, I was kind of a journeyman pro, lived out of my car when I was on the road, and saved up enough money I'd teach, and then I'd go, save up enough money, pay my rent, and then enter a tournament. And I do okay. I survived out there for just about 9 years. And it was a journey that I don't regret at all. I learned a lot about myself and a lot about people. I've got a book with Vijay Singh, which you and I spoke about, just a learning manual that I came up with, and that's kind of bridged me into Channel 4 and things of that nature. So it's been a really good process for me. Looking back now, sleeping in a Nissan Altima, of course, and then showering, at the clubhouse before, and eating Nature Valley granola bars for dinner, and one taco or one bean burrito every night, because that's all the money I had. It was cool. I wouldn't recommend it for the, but it was certainly a great learning experience.
Well, see, and most people will go, "Oh man, he's a pro golfer. I mean, that's awesome. God, that has to be, an unbelievable life." So I guess mentally, how did you balance, wanting to pursue the dream while also, you have to eventually start thinking about providing for yourself, providing for your family, having that sense of comfort? I got to believe you were paid not maybe as much in money, but you were paid more so in experiences. And at a certain point, that kind of has to flip and start to go the other way.
Yeah. So it took me about 7.5 years, 8 years before I really got my big break. And I signed a 2-year deal with a company called Thomas Sign and Awning out of St. Pete, Florida. I signed like a $500,000 deal. And that was right around about 2-3 months later, 9/11 happened. And in my contract, there was like an accident clause that was like, I don't know how to put it, but it was like something of nature. They could pull the sponsorship.
A catastrophic event or something.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what it was named. And, they were worried about paying their employees. They were worried about, what's going to happen. So they kind of pulled the plug on it. And I gave it one more try. I qualified for the Canadian Q school. Went there, got some contingent status, but I didn't have enough money to survive anymore. And like you said, I didn't want to be a 45-year-old guy delivering pizzas. So I said, I better do something. So I started teaching full time, up in Michigan and that kind of thing. And just developed my own niche as far as my style of teaching. And that just grew into what it is today.
Bob, it's good to see you, and it's great to have you on the Rising Champions podcast. And you and I met years ago, and my partner, Dr. Jared Wood, and we did some seminars for you and your students on the mental game. And I just want to build off what Kyle asked in terms of, balancing the mental game, the physical game, and life, and maybe your philosophy on teaching young golfers too, before we get into your story about the Champions Tour. But very interested in your advice and thoughts about what young golfers are going through now, because there's so much more, I think, competition, even when you played for their age group at these days.
Absolutely. So, you know, I use the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got a really easy knack, and Jason, you and I have played, and Kyle, hopefully you and I and Jason will play soon. I just have a knack of seeing what needs to change easy or quickly, I should say, and then give you something that is very precise on what I want you to do. And I try to relate it to like everyday things. Like if you know, some of my tips are like, if you can't release it, you know, I want you to, you know, basically flip a pancake where you feel like that, right? If you're going to flip a pancake, you wouldn't flick it toward your face. You'd roll it over towards, you know, towards the left side of the burner. So, you know, there's simple techniques that I use to try to get people to understand the movement pattern, right? Because as you know, this is probably the toughest game biomechanically that there is, because it's slow movement patterns, and slow movement patterns are the hardest to time because they're not reactionary. So if I can give you something that can relate to you in your everyday life, you can then bleed that over to your golf game. And in all reality, you're not going to work at it. You know, you have a job, you're not going to work at it. There's something that has to relate to you really fast that you can say, oh, okay, that's what Coach wants, that's what Bob wants, that's what Jason wants. So there's something that has to relate to you very, very quickly for you to change it, because it's so difficult to change anything in this game. Like Nick Felder used to say, you know, I would go see David Ledbetter and he'd get a lesson, and then he'd work on this one thing for 2 weeks. He'd work, and it changed an inch. What am I going to expect, you know, the amateur that's not going to work at this thing 5 hours a day, then go play? There's no way that you're going to be able to do that at a high level, or the level that you want to get to. It might be 2 strokes a year. It might be, you know, 1 stroke a year. But you've got to be able to keep it really simple.
Yeah. Bob, I want to get into what's coming up next for you and the work we're doing together. But first, I think the way the decision was made for you to make the chase towards the PGA Champions Tour was quite amazing. I think you told me a little bit about how you were at a Pro-Am day, I think, up at Warwick Hills. If you could maybe fill in the gaps there for that story, when you were playing with David Frost and some other big name golfers, and when someone said to you, hey, you can do this.
Well, to back up a little bit before that,
Sure.
Jason, you and I, or Dr. Jason.
That's fine.
Well, that's so you make everyone feel so calm. You know, you don't have the doctor on anything. So, you know, and I played golf with you several times now, and the guy never gets upset. So, I mean, he does what he's preaching. So that's the biggest thing. To back up to this before, you know, Mickey Redmon's a mentor of mine, and you know that. And, you know, I've known him for about 10 years, and for some reason, he and I met at a golf tournament, a charity event. And, you know, we just struck up a friendship. It just happened organically. And for 2 years, Mickey's been telling me, you know, you got the talent, you got the talent, you got the talent. And I'm just like, you know, Mick, it's just such a hard grind, and it's so difficult. And he goes, well, you don't want to, you know, go through life and be 55 years old and think you can do it then. You've got an opportunity. I'll help you. So he's been kind of chirping at me for 2 years, and I just ignored it. Right. And then another good friend of mine, Joe Vaccari from Andiamo and the Joe Muirs, invited me to play in the Pro-Am a couple of years back, and at the Ally Challenge. And I thought, you know, Mickey's been yelling at me for about a year and a half now. And when Mickey yells at you, that's a very endearing love sign, just so you guys all know. If he doesn't yell at you, he doesn't like you. So I thought, you know, I'm going to focus a little bit. I'm going to actually hit a couple buckets of balls before I go play in this tournament throughout the week and see what shows up. And lo and behold, I shot 2 under par, and I beat the golf pro. I played with David Frost, and you know, David was eye-opening, and it was eye-opening for him. He's like, you know, where have you been? What have you been doing? How can you do this? You know, I literally hit 2 buckets of balls 2 days ago to get ready for this, just to see if I could mentally get through this challenge. And I proved it to myself. And then a week after, I got done with the tournament, I called Mick and I said, all right, I said, if you're willing to, you know, do what you say you're going to do, which is bring in the Red Wings nutritionist, Lisa McDowell, and the trainers from 2SP, Joe Neal, and Dennis Olszewski, you know, I'll commit to this. So I committed to that. Then Mickey calls Marla over at WDIV and says, you know, hey, I've got this story. we better get this thing going. So that's how it kind of turned into the documentary. Steve Garagiola got involved, turned into the documentary called Chase of the Champions Tour. And then I'm doing really well. I lost 45 pounds. And then I think, Doctor, you tried to reach out to me before, and I did not get the message. And then I forgot what I was doing, but I was feeling kind of down. I think I was hitting some golf balls. And they weren't where I needed them to be. And I knew it wasn't physical at this point, right? So I reached out to you, and you were gracious enough to, bring me in as part of your team. So now I've got this group of people that are behind me. And now David Frost jumped on the advisory team. So I've got David, I've got Dr. Novetsky, I've got Mickey Redmon, I've got Joe Neal and Dennis, I got Lisa McDowell. So I've got this group behind me that is pushing me along. That's kind of helping me be accountable, for lack of a better term, and make sure that I'm not, eating the chips and drinking whatever I should not be drinking in excess, and really paying attention to taking me to the next level. So, if I had this back in the day, it would have been a game changer. And I'm very, very humbled and grateful this is actually, happening now.
You have obviously an unbelievable support system and people that are in your corner and pushing you and mentoring you and all that. Do you hear the chirps of, how old are you? And you're trying to do what? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the opposite end of it. And is that something maybe that kind of drew you to Dr. Novetsky, just going, man, I should believe in myself more. I forget, everyone else. I do need to just be focusing on what I can do. I know I can get this done.
Yeah, I have a very high tolerance of not caring what people think about me.
That's great.
But I have exactly. So I think, but I have a very inner demon, right? I've got inner demons and some doubts, and I knew that I had to get rid of those doubts, otherwise I had no chance. It's in all reality. So it's really helped me open up a lot in just my everyday life, where I look at things and I'm like, I got to stay in the moment more. And Dr. Novetsky really says that. And I didn't realize, when I'm playing with David Frost and other guys on the Champions Tour, David would say to me all the time, stay in the moment. You need to stay in the moment. You need to stay in the moment. But it didn't really hit, like, it's not explained to you. What does that mean? It's like, don't move your head in the golf swing. Well, okay, my head is it's so random. It's arbitrary, right? It's this big globe up here. Literally, my head is very large, but so I always tell someone, don't go to the right. And all of a sudden they say, okay, fine, I cannot go to the right. That's easier for me to kind of relate to instead of my whole head. So Dr. Jason made it to the point where he's like, hey, what does stay in the moment mean? Like, what is it? I don't even understand. It's so arbitrary. Like, how do I identify what that really means? Like, stay in the moment, what? Sit in the cart and, put my left foot in here. But no, it means, there's some things that I want to bring up too that Jason taught me a couple weeks ago on a golf course that helped me incredibly. But to get back to Dr. Jason, his style is so calm, as you can tell, Kyle, throughout these podcasts you've done with him. And he just puts it in a way that says, you're accountable for your actions, but here's how I need you to approach them. And it's really worked well for me, for my golf, for sure, and for my life in general.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Bob. It's humbling to hear that as well. And Kyle, what we talked about a lot was, first and foremost, is understanding Bob's why. Like, why did he want to do this? And I think, some of those inner demons that we had to kind of process on what was the purpose of this chase that he's taking on, which is an incredibly public journey as well. So that's another layer that, that he has to deal with because everybody's watching. And one thing we talked about is, you need to do this for yourself. And nobody else. You have this fire in your belly that you need to quell, and this is the way it needs to be done, because, as he said earlier, and Mick said to him, you don't want to look back and have regrets. And so let's go all in, and let's have all these people support him, because I think that's a good message for young people too, that you can't do this yourself. You need a team around you to support you and keep you on the right path, and as Bob said, keep you accountable. So when we get back to, the on the course stuff, though, being in the moment, it's about focusing on the task at hand. And instead of just telling people to do that, you have to teach people how to do that. And the way you do that is real strategic. It's about having good routines. It's about planning ahead and being mentally prepared for all possible distractions. And I think those are the things that begin the process of keeping a person in the present moment and focusing on one shot at a time. Because, you know, as Michael Jordan said, and we talked about this before on the podcast, why worry about a shot you haven't taken yet? And why worry about something that's already happened that you can't go back and change? So let's just focus on what do we need to do right here, right now, execute that calm, cool, collected, and whatever happens, accept the result and move on to the next shot. And as Bob said, you know, I don't get angry out there. You know, I get disappointed, and I think every golfer and every athlete gets disappointed. But then the second you introduce a lot of emotion into anything, it makes you weak. And that's when things start to fall apart. And I think Bob's starting to realize that, and he's getting really good at it too. I mean, I've been out there with him. He's getting great at it.
It helps me identify the moment coming, right? So, and it helps me deal with it. You know, one of the things that Jason told me the other day was, you know, because I look at him, you know, like he's my teacher, he's my coach, he's a mentor. So, like, we got done playing a couple times, and I said, you know, how did I do? Did I pass the test? Did I, you know, like I'm looking for approval, right? So every athlete needs to kind of have someone they can say, hey, listen, did I pass this test mentally? You know, physically I can get it, right? We can all get it physically if we put the time in. Mentally is a whole other level. So, you know, he said, you know, after I shot, I think 7 under par or something like that with you, Jason, at Redmon the first time we played.
That's it? Only 7 under par?
Yeah, right.
Like 3-putted twice, so it could have been even lower. But I didn't get upset, so that's the key. And to do that with Jason in the group where, you know, at the point, and it's going to sound arrogant, but I'm really not being arrogant. If I shoot 65 in a tournament, or not in a tournament where it doesn't really mean anything, it doesn't really mean anything, right? But when I shoot 65 with, you know, the guy that's going to mentally get me to the next level, that means something to me, because that means I cared enough to focus and get to the next point, really put into practice what he wanted me to do. And there's a key thing that he'll remember what he said. And I think it was actually after a shot you didn't like, and I asked you something, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have waited. But you said just right before you hit a golf shot, you need to say, trust it. And that right there, what he said there, it's stuck in me since then. And I haven't been, my next 2 rounds were 67. And my last, I think I shot 2 under par the other day. I've been like minus 17 or 18 over my last 4 or 5 rounds. And I'm just standing, I'm getting the information, I'm gathering the information in the pre-shot routine, which Jason will talk about, that is crucial to developing a good golf swing. If you don't have a good golf game, if you don't have a pre-shot routine, you really don't have a whole lot. But right before I get behind the golf ball, I get all my stuff, and meaning my stuff, my yardage, where I want to hit it, the wind direction. And if I say trust it, I stay calm. And that's one of the reasons why you see this hat is because if I get upset, I just, you know, I kind of lift my hat, or I take the hat off, I look at it, and it kind of brings me back into a happy place, for lack of a better term. But that really helped me really solidify a lot of mental practices that I still have to overcome a lot of. You know, I played in a match the other day that meant something, and I played well, but there was like 3 or 4 shots that I wanted back really bad. And I look back at those now, and I thought, you know, I let my body down because my brain got in the way. And I really could have executed those shots, you know, 100 times out of 100 if I just would have got out of the way and not thought about result. And I started thinking result oriented instead of staying in the moment. And, you know, it really helps.